Before praying, let us read Psalm 25 from the Holy Bible. Unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. O my God, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. Yea, let none that wait on thee be ashamed. Let them be ashamed which transgress without cause. Shew me thy ways, O Lord. Teach me thy paths. Lead me in thy truth, and teach me. For thou art the God of my salvation. On thee do I wait all the day. Remember, O Lord, thy tender mercies and thy loving kindnesses, for they have been ever of old. Remember not the sins of my youth, nor my transgressions. According to thy mercy, remember thou me for thy goodness' sake, O Lord. Good and upright is the Lord, therefore will he teach sinners in the way. The meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will he teach his way. All the paths of the Lord are mercy and truth unto such as keep his covenant and his testimonies. For thy name's sake, O Lord, pardon mine iniquity, for it is great. What man is he that feareth the Lord? Him shall he teach in the way that he shall choose. His soul shall dwell at ease, and his seed shall inherit the earth. The secret of the Lord is with them that fear him, and he will shew them his covenant. Mine eyes are ever toward the Lord, for he shall pluck my feet out of the net. Turn thee unto me, and have mercy upon me, for I am desolate and afflicted. The troubles of my heart are enlarged. O bring thou me out of my distresses. Look upon mine affliction and my pain, and forgive all my sins. Consider mine enemies, for they are many, and they hate me with cruel hatred. O keep my soul, and deliver me. Let me not be ashamed, for I put my trust in thee. Let integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait on thee. Redeem Israel, O God, out of all his troubles. In these sacred words, we hear the quiet cry of a heart that knows its need. David does not begin with pride or certainty in himself. He begins by lifting up his soul. There is something profoundly humble in that gesture. To lift up the soul is to admit that we cannot carry it alone. It is to acknowledge that our wisdom is limited, our strength is fragile, and our understanding is incomplete. Shew me thy ways, O Lord, teach me thy paths. This is the prayer of a teachable spirit. It is the confession that God's ways are higher, gentler, and truer than our own. Humility opens the door to divine guidance. The psalm tells us, "The meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will he teach his way." The world often praises confidence and self-reliance, yet the Lord looks tenderly upon the meek. Meekness is not weakness. It is a quiet strength that trusts God more than self. When we release our need to control every outcome, we become ready to learn. When we surrender our pride, we begin to see the beauty of his mercy and truth woven through every path. Even in affliction, even in distress, the humble heart keeps its eyes toward the Lord, believing that he will pluck its feet from the net. As we reflect on Psalm 25, we are gently invited into that same posture. We are invited to remember his tender mercies and to ask for forgiveness without fear. We are reminded that God delights to teach those who fear him with reverence and love. Today, may we lay down our defenses. May we whisper, "Teach me." And in that simple, sincere prayer, may we begin to learn his ways through humility. There is a quiet beauty in the way Psalm 25 unfolds, like a soft dawn slowly brightening the horizon of the heart. David does not rush his plea, nor does he demand immediate rescue. Instead, he waits. On thee do I wait all the day. Waiting is one of the purest forms of humility. It requires us to loosen our grip on urgency and to trust that God's timing carries a wisdom deeper than our own desires. When we are young in faith, we often ask for swift answers and visible signs. Yet as we grow, we begin to understand that the waiting itself becomes a classroom. In stillness, we notice our fears. In silence, we confront our pride. And in that sacred pause, God gently reshapes our expectations, teaching us that his ways are not hurried, but holy. The psalm speaks tenderly of God's character. Good and upright is the Lord, therefore will he teach sinners in the way. What a comforting truth this is. The Lord does not teach the perfect. He teaches the willing. He does not seek flawless hearts. He welcomes honest ones. Humility is born when we acknowledge our need for mercy. David openly confesses the sins of his youth and his great iniquity. There is no attempt to hide, no effort to justify himself. He simply asks to be remembered according to God's loving kindness. In our own lives, humility blossoms when we stop pretending to be stronger than we are. We learn God's ways, not by presenting a polished image, but by kneeling with sincerity. The Lord meets us there, not with condemnation, but with guidance. His correction is never cruel. His instruction is wrapped in compassion. When he teaches, it is as a patient father guiding a beloved child along a narrow path. The secret of the Lord is with them that fear him. This secret is not hidden knowledge meant to elevate us above others. It is the quiet intimacy of walking closely with God. Reverent fear draws us nearer, not farther. It softens our hearts and attunes our ears. As humility deepens, we begin to perceive his whispers in ordinary moments. We sense his direction in decisions that once confused us. We recognize his mercy in situations that once felt like burdens. Even our afflictions become instruments of instruction. The troubles that enlarge our hearts also expand our capacity to trust. When we are desolate and afflicted, as David describes, we discover that dependence is not a weakness, but a refuge. God plucks our feet from hidden nets, sometimes without us even realizing how entangled we were. To learn God's ways through humility is to accept that his paths may lead us through valleys before mountaintops. It is to trust that mercy and truth accompany every step, even when the terrain feels uncertain. The humble heart no longer demands to understand everything at once. Instead, it prays quietly, "Lead me." And day by day, through forgiveness, patience, and surrendered trust, the Lord shapes a spirit that reflects his gentleness. In that sacred shaping, we find rest. In that surrender, we find guidance. And in that humble walk, we begin to truly know his ways. As we continue to dwell in Psalm 25, we begin to notice how naturally reflection turns into prayer. David does not separate his thoughts from his supplications. His meditation becomes conversation. His awareness of weakness becomes an invitation for divine strength. This gentle movement teaches us something precious. Humility is not silent resignation. It is living dialogue with God. When we admit our need, we open our lips. When we recognize our frailty, we lift our eyes. And in that sacred exchange, our hearts are slowly transformed. Let us, too, enter that posture of prayer. O Lord, we lift up our souls to you. We confess that we do not always understand your ways. At times, we have leaned on our own understanding and walked paths shaped by impulse or pride. Forgive us for the moments we trusted our wisdom more than your word. Remember us according to your mercy. Teach us again. Lead us gently back to the narrow road that is filled with truth and peace. Create within us hearts that are soft enough to be corrected and brave enough to obey. Humility grows when we declare what is true about God. You are good and upright, Lord. You delight in guiding those who seek you. You do not turn away the sinner who repents. You do not ignore the cry of the afflicted. Even when our troubles feel enlarged and our fears seem louder than faith, you remain steady. We declare that your paths are mercy and truth. We declare that your covenant stands firm. We declare that those who fear you will never walk alone. These quiet declarations anchor our souls when emotions shift like restless tides. In moments of distress, humility teaches us to ask for deliverance without shame. O God, look upon our affliction and pain. See the burdens we carry quietly. See the disappointments we rarely speak aloud. Pluck our feet from hidden nets. Rescue us from patterns that entangle our spirits. Guard our integrity. Preserve our longing to walk uprightly before you. When we feel desolate, remind us that your presence surrounds us. When we feel misunderstood, remind us that you know us fully. When we feel weak, remind us that your strength is made perfect in weakness. There is a gentle courage in surrender. It takes courage to wait all the day upon the Lord. It takes courage to release control and trust unseen purposes. Yet as we practice this surrender, something beautiful happens within. Anxiety loosens its grip. Comparison fades. The need to prove ourselves grows quiet. In its place, a steady confidence emerges, not in who we are, but in who God is. This is the fruit of humility. It is not self-rejection, it is God exaltation. It is the quiet joy of belonging to one who guides with wisdom and loves without measure. Lord, shape our hearts to be meek, not passive, but receptive, not fearful, but faithful. Teach us to respond rather than react. Teach us to listen before speaking. Teach us to pause before judging. Let our lives reflect the gentleness we receive from you. May our words carry compassion. May our decisions reflect trust. May our attitudes reveal gratitude. Form in us a spirit that seeks your will above personal ambition. As we close this time of reflection, we rest in a simple assurance. The secret of the Lord is with those who fear him. We desire that sacred closeness. We desire to walk in step with your spirit. So we choose humility again today. We choose to lift up our souls. We choose to wait. And in this quiet choosing, we believe you are already teaching us your ways. There is a sacred slowness in the way God teaches his children. Psalm 25 does not reveal instant transformation or immediate clarity. Instead, it reveals a journey marked by trust, repentance, waiting, and renewed trust again. Humility accepts this rhythm. It understands that spiritual growth is not a sudden leap, but a steady unfolding. When David asks, "Lead me in thy truth and teach me," he is not asking for a single lesson, but for a lifetime of guidance. In our own lives, we often long for quick answers, swift healing, and visible progress. Yet the Lord, in his wisdom, often works beneath the surface. He shapes our character in hidden places. He softens rough edges through quiet disappointments. He deepens our compassion through personal sorrow. The humble heart learns not to despise this slow work. Instead, it begins to treasure it, trusting that every delay holds purpose and every silence carries instruction. Humility also transforms the way we see our struggles. David speaks openly about enemies, affliction, loneliness, and enlarged troubles of the heart. Yet woven through his cries is unwavering trust. "Mine eyes are ever toward the Lord." This is the posture that sustains a teachable spirit. When our eyes drift constantly toward our problems, fear grows larger. When our eyes remain toward the Lord, perspective changes. The circumstances may not immediately shift, but our inner foundation becomes steadier. Humility does not deny pain. It brings pain honestly before God. It says, "Here is my distress. Here is my confusion. Teach me even here." And remarkably, God does. Through hardship, he teaches endurance. Through unanswered questions, he teaches faith. Through weakness, he teaches reliance. We begin to understand that the greatest lessons often emerge from the very places we wish to escape. There is also a quiet purification that comes through humility. When David prays for forgiveness and asks not to be remembered according to the sins of his youth, he demonstrates a heart willing to confront its past. Learning God's ways requires honesty about where we have wandered. Pride resists such reflection. Pride defends and excuses, but humility invites the searching light of God's mercy. It allows him to reveal hidden motives and gently correct distorted desires. This process is not meant to shame us, but to free us. The Lord teaches sinners in the way because he delights in restoration. He does not expose in order to condemn. He reveals in order to redeem. As we yield to this loving correction, we experience a cleansing that brings unexpected peace. The burden of pretending lifts. The weight of unresolved guilt lessens. In its place comes the assurance that mercy truly triumphs over judgment. Over time, humility reshapes our relationships as well. When we recognize how patiently God teaches us, we become more patient with others. When we remember how often He forgives, we become more willing to extend grace. The secret of the Lord, that intimate fellowship promised to those who fear Him, begins to influence our daily interactions. We speak more gently. We listen more attentively. We judge less quickly. The transformation may be subtle, almost unnoticed at first, but it is profound. A humble heart becomes fertile soil, where kindness grows naturally. It reflects the character of the teacher it follows. As we continue this journey through Psalm 25, we are reminded that humility is not a single decision, but a daily choice. Each morning presents a quiet invitation. Will we rely on ourselves, or will we lift up our souls to the Lord? Will we rush ahead, or will we wait all the day upon Him? Trusting the slow work of God requires faith that He is always shaping something beautiful, even when we cannot yet see the outline. So, we breathe deeply. We release the demand for immediate understanding. We fix our eyes upon Him once more. And in that steady gaze, we discover that His ways, though sometimes mysterious, are always marked by mercy and truth. As Psalm 25 continues to echo within us, we begin to sense that humility is not merely an attitude, but a sacred posture of surrender. Reverent surrender is the quiet offering of our will into God's wiser hands. It is the steady decision to trust His character when we cannot trace His plans. David's words reveal this surrender again and again. He does not bargain with God. He does not present conditions. Instead, he entrusts his soul, his fears, his sins, and his future to the one he knows is good and upright. This kind of surrender does not weaken a person, it anchors them. When we finally release our tight hold on control, we discover that God's grip on us has always been secure. Reverence deepens this surrender. What man is he that feareth the Lord? Him shall He teach in the way that he shall choose. Holy fear is not terror, it is awe wrapped in love. It is the awareness that God is infinitely wise, perfectly just, and unfailingly merciful. When reverence fills the heart, humility follows naturally. We stop positioning ourselves as the final authority over our lives. We stop demanding explanations for every detour. Instead, we lean into trust. We begin to say, "If this is the way you choose, then teach me how to walk in it faithfully." In this surrender, peace slowly replaces resistance. There is a tender promise woven into this psalm. His soul shall dwell at ease. Ease does not mean the absence of difficulty. Rather, it describes an inner rest that cannot be shaken by outward storms. Humility allows this rest to flourish. When we surrender outcomes to God, we free ourselves from the exhausting burden of constant striving. We no longer measure our worth by achievements or compare our journey to another's path. We dwell at ease because we believe that the Lord Himself guides our steps. Even when the road narrows or darkens, we trust that it is still a path of mercy and truth. Surrender also invites healing into memories we once carried with shame. David's plea regarding the sins of his youth reminds us that humility is honest about past failures. Yet reverent surrender does not remain trapped there. It places those memories into God's compassionate hands. When we allow Him to redefine our story, regret loses its power. Our past becomes testimony rather than torment. God, in His gentle teaching, shows us how even our mistakes can cultivate empathy, wisdom, and gratitude. What once felt like wasted years can become fertile ground for deeper devotion. Another quiet fruit of surrender is patience. When we truly believe that God is teaching us in the way He chooses, we stop rushing the process. Growth no longer feels like a race. Instead, it becomes a relationship. Day by day, lesson by lesson, the Spirit shapes our responses. We begin to notice small changes within ourselves. Perhaps we react less harshly than before. Perhaps we forgive more quickly. Perhaps we pray sooner rather than later. These subtle transformations are signs that humility is taking root. They are evidence that surrender is not passive, but profoundly active within the soul. In moments of renewed distress, surrender steadies us. When troubles enlarge our hearts again, we return to the same quiet confession, Mine eyes are ever toward the Lord. This repeated turning is the rhythm of a humble life. We may falter, but we look back. We may question, but we look up. Reverent surrender is not flawless consistency. It is faithful returning. And every time we return, we find him waiting with mercy. As we rest in this reflection, we recognize that learning God's ways through humility is a lifelong journey. Reverent surrender becomes both the doorway and the pathway. It opens our hearts to instruction and keeps us walking in trust. So we surrender once more, gently and willingly. We entrust our questions, our hopes, and our uncertainties to him. And in that sacred exchange, we discover that his guidance is not forced but lovingly given, shaping us into hearts that dwell at ease beneath his faithful care. There comes a tender moment in the spiritual journey when we begin to recognize that God's mercy is not only a comfort, but also a teacher. In Psalm 25, mercy appears again and again, not as a distant concept, but as a living presence, guiding a fragile heart. All the paths of the Lord are mercy and truth. This simple declaration reshapes the way we interpret our lives. If all his paths are mercy, then even the road that feels steep carries compassion within it. If all his ways are truth, then even correction holds freedom at its core. Humility allows us to receive this mercy without resistance. Pride whispers that we must earn God's guidance. Shame suggests that we have forfeited his kindness. But the psalm gently corrects both lies. The Lord teaches sinners, he guides the meek, he remembers us according to his loving kindness. When we truly believe this, our striving begins to soften. We no longer approach God as performers seeking approval, but as children longing for direction. Mercy becomes the atmosphere in which we learn. This realization transforms the way we respond to failure. In earlier seasons, we may have hidden our weaknesses, fearing that exposure would lead to rejection. Yet Psalm 25 models a different response. David speaks plainly of sin, affliction, and distress. He does not disguise his need. And in doing so, he discovers that confession is not humiliation, but liberation. Humility dares to say, I was wrong. I am limited. I need forgiveness. Such honesty invites mercy to do its quiet work. When God forgives, he does more than erase guilt. He restores vision. We begin to see ourselves not through the lens of our mistakes, but through the steady light of his grace. This new vision fosters gratitude. We become more patient with our own growth because we understand that God is patient with us. We become gentler with others because we remember how gently we have been treated. Mercy, once received deeply, flows outward naturally. It shapes our tone of voice, our judgments, our expectations. It reminds us that every person we encounter is also in need of guidance and grace. There is also a refining aspect to mercy that humility welcomes. God's compassion does not leave us unchanged. As he teaches us, he gradually aligns our desires with his heart. We may begin the journey asking him to remove discomfort, but along the way, we learn to ask for transformation instead. We may initially seek escape from difficulty, yet through mercy, we discover strength within it. The troubles that once felt unbearable become sacred classrooms where trust is strengthened. Mine eyes are ever toward the Lord. This steady gaze becomes easier when we are convinced of his goodness. We look toward him not out of fear but out of hope, and as we continue looking, something within us steadies. The restless need for immediate answers quiets. The impulse to control every outcome loosens. In its place grows a calm assurance that the one who guides us is both wise and kind. Mercy also teaches us to wait without despair. Waiting can feel empty when we focus only on what has not yet happened. But when we understand that God's paths are woven with loving kindness, waiting becomes purposeful. It becomes a season of unseen preparation. In the quiet, he strengthens roots before revealing fruit. He deepens faith before granting clarity. Humility embraces this hidden work. It trusts that even when we cannot measure progress, God is shaping something enduring within us. The soul begins to dwell at ease, not because circumstances are simple, but because trust has matured. As we rest in this reflection, we see that learning God's ways through humility is inseparable from learning His mercy. The two walk hand in hand. Mercy invites us close, humility keeps us near. Together they form a gentle rhythm of confession, forgiveness, trust, and growth. And in this rhythm, our hearts are slowly conformed to His own steady, compassionate, and faithful. As our reflection on Psalm 25 continues, we begin to see that humility is not fragile or uncertain, but quietly strong. The world often associates strength with independence, self-sufficiency, and visible achievement. Yet the strength described in this psalm is different. It is the strength of dependence. David repeatedly turns his eyes toward the Lord, not away from Him. "Mine eyes are ever toward the Lord, for He shall pluck my feet out of the net." This is not the language of weakness, but of confidence rooted in trust. The humble heart does not pretend it can avoid every snare. Instead, it trusts that God is attentive enough to rescue. There is deep courage in admitting that we need deliverance. There is holy resilience in choosing reliance over self-protection. When we depend on God, we are not shrinking back from life. We are stepping into it with a steady anchor. Dependence becomes a source of peace because it transfers responsibility from our limited hands into His capable care. This quiet strength reshapes how we endure seasons of loneliness or misunderstanding. David speaks of being desolate and afflicted. These words carry weight. They remind us that even faithful hearts experience isolation. Humility does not deny these feelings, nor does it dramatize them. It simply brings them before God. In doing so, it prevents bitterness from taking root. When we acknowledge our pain in God's presence, we allow Him to guard our integrity. "Let integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait on Thee." Waiting in hardship can either harden us or refine us. The difference lies in where we direct our gaze. If we fix our eyes only on those who oppose or overlook us, resentment quietly grows. But if we keep our eyes toward the Lord, trust grows instead. We learn that our worth is not determined by human approval. We remember that God sees every hidden tear and hears every unspoken prayer. This awareness steadies the soul. It strengthens us to respond with grace rather than retaliation, with patience rather than despair. Dependence also nurtures perseverance. When David asks for redemption and deliverance, he does so while continuing to wait. He does not abandon his trust because relief is delayed. This persistence reveals mature humility. It is easy to depend on God when answers come quickly. It is harder, yet far more transformative, to depend on Him when silence lingers. In prolonged waiting, our motives are purified. We begin to desire God Himself more than the solution we seek. We discover that His presence sustains us even when circumstances remain unchanged. The soul learns to dwell at ease not because every problem disappears, but because communion with God deepens. In that communion, subtle strength forms, anxiety gradually loosens, comparisons fade, the need to control diminishes. We become content to walk step by step, guided rather than hurried. There is also a communal dimension to this quiet strength. David's final plea includes redemption for Israel, not only for himself. Humility expands our perspective beyond personal concerns. As we grow in dependence on God, our prayers widen. We begin to intercede for families, communities, and nations. We recognize that just as we need guidance, so does the world around us. This outward turning protects us from self-absorption. It reminds us that we are part of a larger story God is faithfully writing. Our individual surrender contributes to collective blessing. When we choose humility, we influence others through gentleness, integrity, and patient trust. As we reflect on these truths, we see that dependence is not a burden but a gift. It frees us from pretending to be self-made. It allows us to rest in the assurance that God's wisdom exceeds our own. The humble heart stands firm not because it is strong in itself, but because it is rooted in the Lord. And in that rootedness, we find courage for each new day. We lift our souls again, we wait again, we trust again. And through this repeated rhythm of dependence, God continues to teach us His ways, forming within us a strength that is steady, quiet, and enduring. As we continue walking gently through Psalm 25, we begin to understand that some of God's deepest lessons are formed in hidden seasons. These are the quiet stretches of life when progress feels unseen and answers seem delayed. David's repeated posture of waiting reveals a heart being shaped in secrecy. There is no applause in waiting. There is no visible reward in trusting when circumstances remain unchanged. Yet it is precisely here that humility grows strong roots. When we cannot measure advancement, we are invited to measure faithfulness instead. When we cannot trace immediate outcomes, we are invited to treasure steady obedience. Hidden seasons expose our true motivations. Do we seek God only for relief, or do we seek Him for who He is? In the stillness, this question surfaces gently but persistently, and as we remain before Him, something within us simplifies. Our prayers become less complicated. Our desires become less demanding. We begin to say, with quiet sincerity, "Teach me your way, even here." Trust formed in hidden seasons carries a depth that public victories cannot produce. It is refined without spectacle. It is strengthened without recognition. And because it is rooted in humility, it does not depend on praise to endure. There is also a sacred purification that unfolds when we allow God to work beyond our understanding. David's awareness of his own sinfulness does not lead him into despair, but into deeper reliance. Likewise, our hidden seasons often reveal imperfections we had not noticed before. Impatience rises, subtle pride surfaces, fear whispers doubts. These discoveries can feel discouraging at first, yet humility transforms them into invitations. Instead of defending ourselves, we bring these weaknesses honestly before the Lord. We remember that He teaches sinners in the way. We trust that His correction is an expression of love. Gradually, we notice that our reactions begin to change. Where we once demanded immediate clarity, we now practice quiet endurance. Where we once clung tightly to control, we now loosen our grip. This transformation is rarely dramatic. It unfolds slowly, like dawn spreading across the horizon. But it is real, and it is lasting. The hidden season becomes holy ground, not because it is easy, but because God is present within it. We learn that His silence is not absence. His delay is not neglect. His timing is purposeful, weaving mercy and truth together in ways we may only understand later. Trust matures when we continue to look toward Him, even when visibility is low. Over time, hidden trust produces visible fruit. A soul formed in humility carries a quiet steadiness into daily life. We become less reactive and more reflective. We listen more carefully. We respond more gently. The anxieties that once overwhelmed us begin to lose their intensity. Not because life has become simpler, but because our confidence in God has deepened. Mine eyes are ever toward the Lord. This steady gaze becomes a habit rather than a struggle. And with that habit comes peace. We no longer interpret every delay as denial. We no longer assume that difficulty means abandonment. Instead, we remember the pattern revealed in Psalm 25. God guides the meek. He teaches the humble. He redeems those who wait for Him. Even when we cannot see the entire path, we trust the character of the one who leads us. Hidden seasons teach us to value presence over progress, intimacy over immediacy, faithfulness over applause. In that quiet reordering, our souls begin to dwell at ease. The world around us may continue to shift and tremble, but within, there is a gentle stability, anchored in trust. And so we continue, step by step, guided by mercy, sustained by humility, and confident that even the unseen chapters of our journey are shaping us into hearts that truly know His ways. As we near the close of our reflection on Psalm 25, a gentle promise lingers in the heart. His soul shall dwell at ease. This phrase feels like a soft place to rest. It does not describe a life without sorrow, nor a path without uncertainty. Instead, it speaks of an inner habitation shaped by trust. To dwell at ease is to live anchored in the character of God. It is to believe that mercy and truth are not passing moods, but enduring realities woven into every path He ordains. Humility makes such dwelling possible. When we release the exhausting effort to control outcomes, we discover the quiet relief of surrender. When we accept that God's wisdom exceeds our understanding, anxiety loosens its grip. The humble heart does not claim to know every answer, yet it rests confidently in the one who does. This rest is not passive resignation, it is active trust. It chooses to believe that even in affliction, God is attentive. Even in delay, He is purposeful. Even in correction, He is kind. David's closing plea for redemption reminds us that personal peace is never separated from communal hope. He asks God to redeem Israel out of all troubles. Humility widens our prayers. As we learn God's ways through our own struggles, our compassion for others deepens. We begin to recognize that every soul around us carries unseen burdens. The patience God extends to us becomes patience we extend to them. The forgiveness we receive becomes forgiveness we offer. In this way, humility transforms not only our inner world but also our relationships. It softens harsh responses, it tempers quick judgments, it teaches us to listen with empathy rather than react with pride. Dwelling at ease does not isolate us from the world's pain, it equips us to respond with gentleness within it. When our hearts are settled in God's faithfulness, we are less threatened by disagreement and less shaken by disappointment. We stand steady, not because circumstances are stable, but because our trust is rooted deeply. There is a beautiful simplicity in the repeated posture of Psalm 25. Lifting the soul, waiting all the day, keeping eyes toward the Lord. These small, consistent acts shape a life. They remind us that humility is not dramatic. It is daily. It is choosing to pray before reacting. It is confessing quickly when we fail. It is thanking God even before the answer appears. Over time, these quiet choices accumulate into spiritual maturity. We begin to notice that our fears do not dominate us as they once did. Our past mistakes no longer define us. Our future uncertainties no longer paralyze us. Instead, we walk forward with measured steps, guided by mercy and truth. The Lord, in His gentle faithfulness, continues to teach us in the way He chooses. As we reflect on this psalm one more time, we see that learning God's ways through humility is not about achieving perfection. It is about cultivating trust. It is about returning again and again to the one who guides the meek. The journey may include valleys, questions, and waiting. Yet through it all, His loving kindness remains constant. And so we choose humility once more. We lift up our souls. We wait patiently. We keep our eyes toward Him. In doing so, we find that our souls, once restless, now dwell at ease beneath His faithful care. As we come to the end of this quiet journey through Psalm 25, there is a tender stillness that settles over the heart. We have walked through longing and confession, through waiting and surrender, through hidden seasons and renewed trust. And now we rest, not because every question has been answered, but because we have seen again the faithful character of God. He guides the meek, He teaches the humble, He remembers us according to His mercy. These truths become a soft place for the soul to lie down. Perhaps you feel a gentle stirring within you, a desire to trust more deeply, to surrender more freely, to wait more patiently. That desire itself is evidence of His Spirit at work. Humility is not achieved in a single moment. It is chosen again and again in quiet decisions. Today, you may simply whisper, "Teach me your ways." And that whisper is enough to begin. God is not hurried. He is not distant. He is near to the heart that seeks Him with reverence and honesty. Let us close in a short prayer. Gracious Father, we lift our souls to You once more. Thank You for Your mercy that guides and Your truth that steadies us. Teach us to walk in humility. Guard our hearts from pride. Help us to trust Your timing and rest in Your faithful care. When we are uncertain, remind us that your paths are mercy and truth. Keep our eyes ever toward you. Shape our lives to reflect your gentleness. If this reflection has blessed your heart, may you continue seeking him daily. Let your journey of humility grow quietly and steadily. Stay rooted in his word and walk softly in his ways. Amen.